Hello, my name's Tylee Arnold. I'm a senior at Wayne State College studying criminal justice, and this is my presentation called Repercussions of Homicide. So to give us an overview, I'm going to be starting with our introduction, and then we're going to talk about nature versus nurture, acts of passion and jealousy, with a special focus on jealousy, premeditation and revenge, with a special focus on revenge, preferred outcome, present investigation, methods. We're going to talk about the reviewed material, participants, procedure, results. And then diving into the results, we're going to start with the case of Rex Hewerman. We're going to talk about his background, the evidence of the case, the details of the case, and also the legal repercussions of his actions. We're going to talk about Evan Miller, the background, details, evidence, and repercussions, and Leroy Bram III, details, evidence, and repercussions. We're also going to talk about the discussion and the limitations, and finally, we're going to end with our conclusion. It's very important to note that humans have always had a primitive instinct to kill one another. This is not anything new or as of the last 100 years. This traces all the way back to the first generation of people to ever walk the planet. This actually traces back to the Bible when Cain first killed his brother Abel. It's important to understand why some people kill, because it can actually help us to treat those people and also treat more people who are prone to committing murder in the future, or people who are going through a lot and might snap under personal pressure. This will help us save lives and prevent other people from also committing murder. Every person at some point in time has probably thought about what it would be like to kill someone, although you didn't actually think that, you were going to go through with it. It might be fun to ponder the repercussions of it, but in reality, murder is actually a huge deal and a serious crime. So in this presentation, I will cover a few contexts and scenarios in which the infamous question can actually be answered. What motivates a person to kill? So for the big question, what motivates a person to kill? There can actually be many reasons that a person might kill someone else. This can be due to stress, anxiety, hate, literally anything else, anything that makes up you, your problems, your traumas, your wounds, your hurts, any of those things that might drive you to do something so heinous. Every single murder is honestly case dependent. No two murders are the same and no two murderers are the same. When you think of somebody who kills, what do you think of? I tend to think of a serial killer, while others might think of Halloween or something simple like a Dateline TV show or a true crime podcast. But the truth is, murder is actually a really dark topic and it's actually a really big deal, and anyone is capable of killing someone for absolutely any reason. And not all murderers are deranged. In fact, a lot of the time, murderers or people who kill another person are honestly just ordinary people. Some of them work 9 to 5 jobs and have families, but have something to take care of, or have a jealousy that they need to reprimand. The first of the 4 key reasons that I found that somebody might murder somebody else is actually nature versus nurture. This is one of the first things that you have to look at, especially in like psychology and sociology, especially in criminology. Nature versus nurture. This is looking at how you were raised, what kind of family you were born into, your heritage, just your genetics, that kind of stuff that plays a role into the kind of person that you might become, the kind of palette that you already are when you're born, per se. This, like I said, just boils down to being raised a certain way or being born a certain way. Some people are born with psychopathic and antisocial traits, while others are raised in like insensitive ways, like for example, abuse or neglect or trafficking, and other people hang out with the wrong peer groups and join gangs or just get into really weird, dark things, or maybe they just never move out of their mom's basement. The context of a person can determine their motives to kill someone, and it's actually key in determining why somebody did what they did, because did they do it for a specific reason, or is it just their hand of cards that they were drawn? Breakdown of socialization is key in investigating this concept. So the second big topic, and main reason for a lot of murders that take place is actually acts of passion and jealousy. Now, these go hand in hand, but I'll explain that. So, an act of passion is murders that are committed because of the heat of the moment or a raw reaction to something detrimental. Now, a lot of Dateline, episodes are over stuff like this. Acts of passion is defined as a crime that is committed in response to a provocation rather than having been deliberate or premeditated. And this actually can come with lesser criminal charges too if you can prove that this was like an element or whatever. What provokes this act of passion must be that which is calculated to inflame the passions of a reasonable person. So basically what that means is if it reasonably made you react that way, then you're good, basically, for lack of a better word, okay? For example, a man catches his wife cheating on him, and he fatally shoots both the wife and the other lover in the heat of the moment on the spot. Maybe he doesn't shoot his wife, maybe he just shoots the other lover. You get it, though. So, actually, to explain this picture that I have here, that is a gun going off. So a man caught his wife cheating on him, and he actually got shot by the other man on Facebook Live while he was confronting him for sleeping with his wife. That's insane. So this one is actually probably the most self-explanatory and easy to understand topic. So if you've been bored so far, snoozing, you don't know what's going on, this one is for you. So this is jealousy, and this is piggybacking off of our last slide, which is acts of passion and jealousy. So, you already know what this is. You probably, read books, seen movies, watched the Lifetime channel. You already know what happens in the murder of jealousy, right? A murder of jealousy is when someone kills someone else because they are jealous of them or something that they have. So, like, for example, two best friends like the same guy, but obviously only one of them can have him. So the other one is jealous and she kills her friend. Or maybe she just kills the guy and her friend just dies of sadness. For another example, a wife knows that her husband is cheating on her, so she plans his last breath and she kills him. She slips something in his drink. She pushes him down the stairs, whatever that looks like. Maybe she found a note, a love letter in his coat pocket. Maybe he didn't know that she knew. This goes hand in hand with acts of passion, because acts of passion, they are emotions that are highly inflated, which can often make you do crazy things that are inflated with jealousy. So that's how they are intertwined, and that's how they go hand in hand. This can cause someone to snap with both of these elements. Our third key topic is premeditation and revenge. For this slide, we'll just focus on the premeditation aspect. This is one of the most commonly understood and easy to understand kind of concepts of murder is the element of premeditation. Oftentimes people are fascinated by like serial killers, like MO and like how they do things. Premeditation is like a huge aspect in a murder. Murders of premeditation are murders that have been planned out already and premeditated before they were executed. They are defined as a murder that was planned out in advance and was carried out willfully. Guilty actus reus and mens rea. Someone might plan to kill someone for a multitude of reasons. Premeditation aspect when there is a guilty mens rea and an intention to kill. So, because there's so many different reasons that somebody might kill someone, it really only counts as premeditation if there's the guilty mens rea and the intention to kill, and then obviously if they carry it out. First-degree murder is the worst of the premeditation charges, and it is defined as any intentional murder that is willful and premeditated with malice aforethought, which means that they planned it out and they still deliberately went through with it. They knew what they were doing the whole time. Revenge. This is the second component of our premeditation and revenge. So just like the acts of passion and jealousy, this one, it's hard to exist without the other one because you can't have them without the other. For example, let me clear it up. If I'm gonna kill someone because I'm mad at them, I would have had to have planned out the fact that I was gonna kill them because I was mad at them. You see what I'm saying? So premeditation goes alongside revenge because murders of revenge are usually very carefully coordinated and planned. Even if they're not very carefully coordinated and planned, there's still malice aforethought because you still had the intention to kill. Murders of revenge are doused in past pain and trauma and are killings of pure spite. Murders of revenge are committed in the name of vengeance because someone had it coming. Some revenge seekers may think that they are doing the world a legitimate justice, but they're just wrong because it's not their vengeance to take for others. In this image, I have two people who actually pled guilty to revenge killing a woman who ratted them out for unlawfully owning firearms. A, good for her. B, if they unlawfully owned firearms, what did you think that they were going to do to you? Because look at these people, they don't look like they mess around. This is actually the final component of what is the most common reason that people kill someone else. So this is preferred outcome. This is just, in simple terms, this is when somebody kills somebody else because it is a direct benefit to them or somebody that they know or somebody that they're trying to help. So like for example, you kill someone to get a business deal from them, or like you kill a prostitute that you got with because they were going to whistleblow, or whatever, that kind of thing. These are often the fancy killings that you hear about in the podcasts and see on the shows. These are the killings that are done so well that they're almost glamorized in a way. They're premeditated to the finest extent. And then they're hidden so well. They're hidden so well because everybody that is involved has a secret to keep. Murders of preferred outcome are killings that take place for the direct convenience and benefit of someone involved. This is usually just the person who commits the murder. For example, killing off high-end officials to secure business deals, killing victims who have evidence against you, killing your wife to be with somebody else, etc. Elites and celebrities are not innocent. In fact, they're among the most common offenders in this. There's actually a lot of celebrity preferred outcome murder theories. If you go online, you can just Reddit thread for days. Prime example of this is Stanley Meyer, who was a victim of the US government, which is a theory. He figured out how to make his car run efficiently using water, and then he suddenly died mysteriously shortly afterwards. His autopsy showed that he had an aneurysm, but it's actually been reported through multiple sources that he was eating in a diner and he came out, and his last words, he was choking himself and he said, "They poisoned me." He was screaming and gripping his neck. And that's when he died. Present investigation. The aim of this study is to examine the outcomes, repercussions, and legal consequences of people who commit homicide. This study compiles knowledge from other studies and research provided online to demonstrate what happens to criminal homicide perpetrators. Each murder case is different from the last, and the outcomes, sentencing, and charges filed in each case are no exceptions. This work reviews works by many other scholars and legal experts. Participants. The participants for this study were Rex Heuermann, Evan Miller, and Leroy Brown III. Rex Heuermann was chosen because of the aspect of multiple murders and the separation of their limbs. Evan Miller was chosen due to the unique circumstance of his young age yet heinous arsonist and brutal actions paired with the homicide. Leroy Brown III was chosen due to his extreme and outstanding jealousy and hatred toward his intimate partner and the exceptionally brutal beatdown of his intimate partner before her death. So for the methods, the reviewed materials that I used came from the internet primarily. I used web forums and court cases. The most popular websites that I used were the McCready Law Group, Find Law, Justia, Oyez, Forbes, Economic Times, New York Post, and other websites. Procedure. Cases that were complex and involved numerous legal strategies were chosen for this project. Many case studies, each different in variety, which paint the scope of what should happen to a person who commits homicide and expect incoming sentences, were identified. Each of these cases is unique and nuanced in different ways. Each killer's background was reviewed to analyze how their backgrounds may affect whether they commit homicide, the type of homicide that they commit, and the potential charges and sentencing. So the first case that I reviewed for the results was the case of Rex Heuermann. This one is actually still an active case. As we will learn later, he is actually going to go back to trial this week on April 17th. So he is an architect from Long Island. He's working in Manhattan, where his architectural firm is located. He was actually arrested in July 2023, just last year, in connection to a murder case where there were multiple bodies found along the beaches of Ocean Parkway. He was charged with the murders of 4 women. These murders were referred to as the Gilgo Beach murders, and they took place over a decade ago. His victims were all sex workers and escorts. So, unpacking his background a little bit, many colleagues have complained of his overly confident and not at all professional attitude. In 2022, he was filmed saying city workers were not properly trained on city code and laws, stating his patience for them was actually one of his greatest skills in the workplace. Interviewers who have interviewed him before, his colleagues, and his clients for his architectural firm, they all say that he was super, super creepy. One of his previous colleagues reported receiving a creepy voicemail from him, even though she'd actually never met or worked with him. His neighbors say that he's left no remarkable imprint on the neighborhood for the most part. One of them says that on Halloween and on holidays, his house is the house to avoid because he was not friendly, he was not easy to deal with, and he was not welcoming of people on his property. Previous schoolmates say that he was creepy. He was picked on and he was nerdy. One of his schoolmates says that he left unwarranted, creepy love letters in her locker. They were never dating, and he had never been of romantic interest to her. So the evidence against Rex Heuermann, there were terabytes and terabytes of data and over 2,500 documents uncovered from his laptop. And a terabyte is, I think, 1,000 gigabytes of data. Tons of phone calls were made from his burner phones. His victims' cell phones can be traced back to his Manhattan office, including their burner phones. His Chevrolet Avalanche was spotted in one of the victims' disappearances. He's also made taunting and explicit phone calls to the families of the victims, which was actually a key clue in solving the case. He used his personal cell phone and his victim's cell phone to accomplish these phone calls. He also called the victim's sister with detailed and explicit information about her murder. So continuing on with the evidence against Rex Heuermann, he was seen on surveillance camera buying burner phones and taking victim cell phones from them. Hundreds of burner phones were found on his property. They also found hair on the materials used to wrap the victims' bodies, which was some of the wife's hair, actually, Rex Heuermann's wife. There was a discarded pizza box with a confirmed DNA match on it. Burlap tape was found at the scenes, and he used several fake name online accounts to contact and lure the women under the guise of being a photographer. There was child and sadistic pornography searches found in his internet search history, as well as murder case updates about himself and the murders that he committed being searched frequently on his laptop. So getting into some of the cruel and disturbing details of the murders of Rex Heuermann, one of his victims' legs was found wrapped in plastic at a park in 1996, and in 2011 her skull was found in a separate location. And this is actually a recurring theme for his victims. Most of his victims were dismembered, while their skulls were found in one location and other body parts were found at other locations. The authorities have actually said that the circumstances around this murder were exceptionally cruel and premeditated. He lured his victims by pretending to be a photographer and offering them various rides, but killing them instead. Their remains would be found along Gilgo Beach. Most of them were strangled and dismembered. He was chronically obsessed with the police involvement and updates on these cases. Like I said before, constantly Googling the updates, constantly Googling the landmarks, the evidence, anything like that. So the repercussions for the actions of Rex Heuermann. Because of the exceptionally cruel circumstances, he's being held without bail. He has been charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and 4 counts of second-degree murder. He has pled not guilty to all of these charges, and the investigators believe that he is connected to other murders in the area as well, and they are working overtime to prove it and ensure that justice prevails. If he is convicted, he faces multiple life sentences without parole, and he will die in prison. He goes back to trial on April 17th, 2024. For the results section, this one is the case of Evan Miller. He was a 14-year-old boy who murdered Cole Cannon with the help of his friend Colby Smith, who was 16 years old. The two boys actually brutally beat Cole Cannon to the point where he could no longer stand up, and they left him laying on the ground to die. And then they set his trailer on fire. Evan Miller background. So Evan Miller grew up in an abusive home. His family was always involved in the Department of Human Services. His dad abused the family and neglected the kids. He even slapped and beat the children around, and he beat the bottoms of their feet. His parents were drug and alcohol addicts. They were always arrested for various reasons, at least 14 times. He never had a stable place to live because his family was constantly getting evicted from place to place to place. They were in extreme poverty. Their dad was a trucker and he worked almost around the clock. Then when he would come home, he would beat their family and leave. They were placed in foster care, where he fought with the other kids and choked female housemates and threatened to kill other housemates. He's tried to hang himself multiple times at 6, 7, 13, and 15. Evan Miller case details. The 2 boys got Cannon drunk and searched through his trailer to rob him of narcotics. They didn't find any narcotics, but they did find baseball cards, and they stole them. They played drinking games with him throughout the night until he drunkenly passed out. Then Miller stole his wallet and split hundreds of dollars of cash with Smith, and then tried to put the wallet back into Cannon's pocket. But when he reached for the pocket, Cannon suddenly snapped awake and grabbed Miller by the throat. Miller grabbed a baseball bat and beat him over the head repeatedly, as well as across his face with his fists. And at the end of it all, Cannon said to him, "Why are you doing this to me?" Then Miller covered him with a sheet and proclaimed over his limp body, "I am God, and I've come to take your life." Then he hit him again with the bat, and that was the last time. The boys spent several hours cleaning up the blood and setting multiple fires to the trailer. As they left, they heard Cannon coughing from the smoke, although they thought he was dead. Firefighters saw the blood on the walls and the coffee table. He and his friend gave many conflicting statements to police about what happened, and the investigators caught them in so many different lies. Evan Miller evidence. Law and fire officials determined there were 4 fires that started in the trailer home. They found blood all over everything. The pillows, where the blood was actually still visible through the fire damage, the walls, the coffee table, and a towel. An autopsy concluded that Cannon had suffered a 2-inch contusion on the left side of his head from blunt force trauma and had 6 rib fractures on both sides of his body. His cause of death was smoke inhalation while being intoxicated, accelerated by lacerations and bodily trauma. He likely died because he was too drunk to escape his trailer, and his blood alcohol content was at 2.16, which is actually twice the legal limit. Evan Miller repercussions. In 2003, Evan Miller was charged as a juvenile with 2 counts of capital murder. And for this charge, the death penalty is the most common repercussion, but another popular one is life in prison with no parole. In 2004, the court granted the motion to allow Miller to be tried as an adult due to the severity of his crimes. In 2006, he was indicted on 2 counts of capital murder under Count 2 arson and Count 1 felony murder charges. He was sentenced to life without parole. After his sentencing, he filed a writ of certiorari, which led to a retrial in 2017. The court found that he would likely not pursue rehabilitation if given a lighter sentence, and they found he had an obvious lack of remorse and a bored demeanor. His sentence of life in prison without parole was upheld. Colby Smith, who was his accomplice, pled guilty and received a life sentence with eligibility for parole after 10 years in prison. For the results, the case of Leroy Bram III, the background. Violent and jealous, he encouraged his girlfriend to have sexual relationships with another man. They had a polyamorous relationship and a pre-agreed upon third-party involvement type of dynamic. His girlfriend regularly slept with this other man, and he was fully aware of their interchanges. He became jealous and exploded on her, saying he was tired of her choosing to sleep with the other man over him. He killed her. Her name was Annabelle Rose Meenan. Leroy Bram III details. Her death was brutal and painful, and Bram beat her within an inch of her life and then crushed her with an entire sofa. He held her head down and punched it 21 times. He choked her to the point of unconsciousness. He stopped briefly before punching her over the head 80 more times and stomping on her head 85 times. This beating caused her to go into cardiac arrest. While she was arresting, he picked up the living room sofa and dropped it with all of his strength over her body and then fell asleep on it. Authorities saw Meenan unresponsive on the floor with massive wounds and extensive head injuries. She was rushed to Phoenixville Hospital where she was pronounced dead. Leroy Bram III evidence. The doctors verified that she suffered extensive head and face trauma and bruising all over her body, including her arms, legs, torso, and pelvic area. Bram had significant swelling and bruising in his hands, fingers, and elbow. There was blood all over the kitchen walls. The oven no longer had glass on the door, presumably because the door was shattered by the victim's head. There were holes in the walls, and her phone was damaged and on the floor. There was hours of home security footage that showed ongoing abuse from Bram towards Meenan. The evidence is ongoing. He was seen punching furniture while screaming at Meenan on footage. An hour later, she was seen on the same videotape with extensive leg injuries and trouble walking. A tape that was recovered from shortly before her death shows him strangling her until she was unconscious and then slapping her limp body repeatedly. 10 days later, he punched her 21 times in the head and strangled her yet again. Investigators were disgusted when they saw the video of her murder taped on home security tapes. Her killing is described by the investigators as merciless. Leroy Bram III, Repercussions. The jury spent only 1 week reviewing the mountain of evidence for this case. After only 1 hour of deliberation, Bram was convicted of first-degree murder and multiple counts of aggravated assault, simple assault, and recklessly endangering another person. This case is a bombshell case because the evidence was mostly in one place and was absolutely irrefutable. It was the most damning evidence that these investigators had seen yet. He has yet to be sentenced, but has been held since December of 2021. His first-degree murder charge will carry life in prison without parole. The judge has the right to add more time because of all the pending charges. Discussion. Case studies indicate that there are many different reasons and motivations to kill someone. The breakdown of socialization should be considered. Background, socioeconomic status, familial status are all important factors. One is more likely to become a killer if they were raised with a violent upbringing. Most killers are survivors of past trauma, which is the case with Evan Miller. Jealousy is a big motivator and is most often committed by the man, most commonly sexual jealousy. The man is the most violent, aggressive, and hostile in the relationship. Both of these points are the case with Leroy Bram III. Jealous partners should be dealt with right away because they can quickly develop a deep hatred for their partner, which turns into fights and can eventually resolve in death. Narcissistic personality disorder, sociopathic disorder, and antisocial personality disorders are clear indicators that someone is more likely to kill, which was the clear case with Rex Heuermann. For this study, there are many limitations. So to start, limited resources made the search a little bit more difficult. Google search engine has links and sources that look good, they look promising, but then once you click on them or you intend to include them, you have to pay or enter your email and phone number and all that kind of stuff. Another limitation was limited available information for the cases. That's because some of these cases are ongoing and awaiting sentencing, and we will know more after the fact. Another limitation was the credibility, because sources can be tricky to find, and even some sources that look credible are not necessarily acceptable. The number of cases was another limitation. There are only 3 cases that were reviewed in this study. So you cannot draw conclusive results on why people commit homicide with only 3 cases. And the final limitation was the gender reviewed. Only males were reviewed for these cases, so any of these conclusions would apply to males and not females. Conclusion. There are a wide multitude of factors that could drive someone to kill another. It's the compound elements that really tell the story. Killers and their motivations should continue to be studied because each case is unique and nuanced. Nature versus nurture is a big factor. This means you're predisposed to early life trauma or violence. Acts of passion and jealousy are another factor. Revenge or personal gain. Cases should not be lumped together, but should be studied individually. In conclusion, based on all the elements present during the crime, the judicial system will give a homicide offender an appropriate charge and a corresponding sentence. As examined, the killer would typically receive life in prison. The specific details will vary depending on the severity of the crime. Not all murder cases carry life in prison without parole, which was the case with most of the offenders in the study.